looking at one of the rarest domestic muscle cars ever produced, the 2016 Chevrolet Camaro Indianapolis 500 Pace Car. There were 56 in all built. The first two were white. Those are the ones used on the track. The next 54 were made in Blew Me Away Blue. Now this is a rare color only produced for the Pace cars. Now in 2016, the 2016 Pace cars were the first to be built before domestic production began. These were pre-production cars. So anyone who has one of the 54 blue cars has a pre-production car. We'll talk about more about this incredibly rare car next on Rare Muscle Cars in America. Hi there, my name's Larry. Welcome to the story of one of the rarest muscle cars today, the 2016 Chevrolet Camaro Indianapolis Pace Car. Now, many people don't know that the Camaro paced the race, let alone have seen one of the Indianapolis Pace cars. And if you haven't, you're not alone. There were only 54 of these vehicles made. And they're very, very rare, of course. But beyond that, if you're looking to purchase one, I thought it'd be important to show you what to look for so you'd know exactly what to find to know that you could authenticate what you were buying is real. So let's start out with talking a little bit about the car. In 2015, at the end of the model year, production left Canada in Oshawa and went south back to the United States. Went to the Lansing River plant, and the plant was retooled and set up to make the new Camaro. Of course, it rides on the Cadillac Alpha chassis, which makes it close to 300 pounds lighter. It now carries the Corvette LT1 engine in it, and it's quite a capable handler for sure. But when it comes to the Pace car, it's very, very rare. Only 54 cars were made in all. Now, 2 cars officially, only 2 paced the race, and that's typical for manufacturers. One vehicle is there to pace, while the other one is there in case one has mechanical breakdown issues. Both of those cars were white. However, that's the only differences between these 2 cars. Now, this car is as much a pace car as a 69 pace car is, even though a 69 pace car may not be the pace car that was on the track pace in the race, it still is a pace car. This is the same in 2016. The difference is there's only 54 of these made. Now let me tell you a little bit about the differences if you're looking to purchase one of these rare vehicles, because some still do exist on the marketplace. It's important to get your documentation. That's number one. Now, I was very blessed when I purchased this vehicle because for me, it was one of those things that if it wasn't for the kind people at Mike Anderson Chevrolet in Merrillville, Indiana, and the kindness of Mr. Anderson himself, there's no way I'd have this vehicle. But through his kindness, I got it, and I can't thank him enough. So Mike, if you're listening, thank you. One of the things that's important to have is documentation. That's strictly a must for a car like this. When you have something that's so few and far between, as the years go by, there will be copies made. Now, it's important to know what to look for then. So while the car is still new, it's important for someone that has one to tell you what to look for. Now, if you're lucky enough to buy one new, I should say in my case, blessed enough, look for what's called the MSO, or Certificate of Origin. Now, this is a very rare piece of documentation. Most people never see it. This is typically handled behind closed doors at the dealership. Essentially, it's the car's birth certificate. So it comes from the manufacturer and then is shipped from the dealer that sells the car to the retailer purchaser, to that retailer purchaser's Department of Motor Vehicles division. So the buyer never sees it. That's just usually how it works. However, in this case, I was blessed to get one. So I'll show you what it looks like. We'll take a look at one here. Now, the MSO for this car is right here. Excuse my hand. There's the Certificate of Origin, or MSO, for this car. And it's important to note that these cars are pre-production vehicles, meaning they're made before 2016 Camaro production ever began. And this car in particular was made for Chevrolet. It was not made for the general public to begin with. This was a company use vehicle. It was first made by General Motors. The date of transfer was just before the Indianapolis 500 this year, but it had to be titled. So for General Motors to give its birth certificate to someone, it sold it to name a distributor, dealer, etc. It sold it to General Motors LLC. So General Motors owns all of these vehicles from the start. So when you're looking at one of these vehicles, it's important to note that General Motors was the first owner. These are company vehicles. They were used in Indiana, and then they were used for the race from April until May of 2016. And then from there were sold to Indiana area dealerships for sale to the retail buyer. Now, not all of these vehicles were used at Indianapolis. There are examples where you'll find one that has 5, 10, 20 miles on it. Those vehicles were not used in Indiana. They simply weren't. The used vehicles from Indiana will typically have between 2 and 5,000 miles, somewhere in that range, depending upon how many events they did. Also true are not all the vehicles were on the Indianapolis 500 Speedway track, and not all of the vehicles were at the parade. This is my car here, car number 48. It was both on the Speedway track and at the parade. So both of those elements exist for this particular car. However, some do exist that don't have that documentation. Now, the other thing you'll want to do if you're looking to purchase one of these is go to the parts department and ask for the build sheet. Any Chevrolet parts department can reprint the build sheet that the factory used to build your vehicle. So that's a great way to document if what you have and what you're looking at purchasing is really an Indianapolis 500 Pace car. So we're going to start with the build sheet and the way that Chevrolet looks at how they look, I should say. They're different than a lot of other vehicles' build sheets. They're more like a computer spreadsheet than they are a build sheet like you see from someone else. So a few things you're looking at. Number one, the Pace cars are painted a slightly different color. Now this is maybe a misnomer to a lot of people because there is a color that General Motors makes in 2016 called Hyper Blue. However, this car is painted a different color. If we look down here at the build sheet, we take a look right here at this RPO code. It says exterior color primary, blew me away metallic. Okay, so we know that the vehicle's color is not hyper blue, but blew me away metallic. It's a mouthful. I'll show you what I mean. I've had this car compared to two actual hyper blue cars, and there's definitely a difference. There's a lot more vibrancy in the blue, and there's more metal flake in this blue. Let me show you just how much metal flake is here. You can see it on the gloss of the fender. Just a moment here, I'll show you. So as you can see, this car has an incredible amount of metal flake built into the paint. It's very, very shiny. It's got a lot of metal flake. It has just an incredible amount of gloss to it. It's also very vibrant. So the blew me away blue color they chose very carefully, and it was a good choice because it really does stand out very carefully in this car, okay? So that's what you're looking for on the build sheet. You're looking for a car that's got blew me away metallic, okay? Second of all would be RPO code OAR. Now OAR is a special code, and I'll tell you why. As we look down here on the build sheet, OAR is right here, identification, pre-production, bucket batch build process. So we know from that case this is a pre-production build. It's built before the 2016 Camaros were produced. We also know it's a bucket batch build, which means that all 54 of these vehicles were built at one time. So you want to see that on your build sheet. You want to make sure that it's one of the pre-production cars. All Indy cars are pre-production builds, so that's very important. The final RPO code that's really important that you want to see, and of course all these codes are also on your car on the service tag that are put like in the trunk and in different places of your vehicle, is the final one, and that's right here, Z4Z merchandise package Indy Pace Car. So again, that helps to identify that it is indeed one of the 54 Indianapolis Pace cars. Now, it's important to note that when you're talking about a car that's this rare, you really need to do a lot of homework because, again, some of the cars were on the track and some of the cars weren't. The first thing you're going to see is you're going to look for a number because each car is sequentially numbered. Now, in this case, the number is not on some big metal plate somewhere on the dash or prominently displayed somewhere in the car. It's actually hidden. It's hidden in the left door jamb. I'll show you the one that's on this car. They're all the same. It's just that each one has a different number, of course. And on here it says 2016 Indy 500 Parade Car, limited edition, 48 of 54. What the heck? Parade car? What? It said Pace Car on the build sheet, but it also says on the invoice Festival Car. And on the window sticker, it says Festival Package. So you have to go with what the build sheet says because that's how they actually built it, which would be it's a Pace car. And that always comes down to build, what the build sheet is. Just like in 67 and 69 Camaros, While you probably don't have the one that actually paced around the race, you have one that looks like the one that paced around the race. Therefore, it's a pace car. The same in this as well in the 2016. However, the 2016 is made in increasingly rare numbers. That's the difference. Another thing to the 2016 that you're going to see on the pace car model is this. You're going to find the Indy decals. Now, this is a common decal to a lot of pace cars throughout the years, the flying tire logo. That's one that we see a lot. Now, in 2016, they also add this to the doors, and all pace cars typically have door decals. And that's the door decal here. The 100th running of the Indianapolis 500, but there's a hidden meaning here, and I'll show it to you. Right here, where this 1 is, that's like a ghost 1. And the reason that ghost 1 is there is because in 1911, the Chevrolet brothers first came to Indianapolis to race. So Chevrolet is honoring their heritage by that second 1 being there and honoring the Chevrolet brothers for their time at Indianapolis and honoring 1911. So you'll see those two decals. Now, you may think, well, sure, you could take a hyper blue Camaro and put those decals on it and have the white stripes and you have an instant pace car replica, right? Not so. That's why it's important to have the build sheet. There's other things that help determine if this is a real pace car or not, and I'll show those to you as well. Every pace car from the factory comes with a couple of other things. It's very important. Plus, mechanically, there's one other thing that's different from the pace car than the regular Camaro as well, and I'll show that in a second. First of all pace cars are numbered on the windshield from the factory. As you can see, this car here is car number 48. That coincides with the number that's on the left door sill. I'm sorry, the left door striker plate, excuse me. And then you have what's here is a very important piece, the Chevrolet Crew Fleet Pass. It just says Crew Fleet Pass. What that is that's the sticker that actually allowed it to go on the Indianapolis Motor Speedway track. That gave it the credentials to actually be on the track to be there and drive around the speedway. So that's kind of a very important piece. The third one is the parking lot pass. Right here it shows it's parked at the end lot. So for the 2016 race, this car and many others like it were parked in the end lot. Now, it's important to note there are two different parking passes that are on pace cars for 2016. One says N lot, one says Indy. Both are legitimate, but those are the two you look for. Unfortunately, there are some vehicles out there that are for sale that are missing these two stickers, both the gate pass and the parking lot pass. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they weren't on the track or didn't park at the race. It could mean that the dealership just took the stuff off, because Chevrolet brought the vehicles as they were from Indianapolis to the dealership, sold them to the dealership, and they sold them from there. It's possible the car was still there, but not necessarily, showing it still on the windshield. The more documentation you can get, however, the better. So try and find one that has both of those pieces on your windshield, because, again, the more documentation you have on any vehicle, the more valuable it is. Now, there's one thing that you could always tell different about a Camaro Pace Car as well from any other 2016 Camaro. It stands out like a sore thumb, and that is the strut brace. On a 2016 Camaro Pace Car, all strut braces are aluminum. As you can see, that's an aluminum strut brace between the two strut towers there. So the strut brace being aluminum on this car and not black as they are on all other Camaros stands out and makes it truly different than the other ones. Now, that could be because it was pre-production, they were going to build them all that way, and that's just how Chevrolet had designed it. Or it could be that they put them that way because that's what they wanted for the Indy 500, because they would be on this track and they wanted to have, special duty with them and make them a little stiffer. Who knows why they're there? But all the Indy Pace cars have an aluminum strut brace. So that's one of the first dead giveaways to look for. And it's only on the Pace cars, okay? The last piece to look for is all 2016 Pace Car Camaros have a matching license plate that corresponds with the serial number build of the car. In this case, of course, we're talking about car number 48. And right here is the license plate for this car. It is a legal license plate in the state of Indiana. And it basically shows that it expired in June of this year. It was legal, and it is car 48. So any car that you get, that you find from number 1 through 54 should have its original license plate as well, because that was made by the factory and went with the car to Indianapolis. How it all worked was the cars were built at the Lansing River plant. They were shipped them by truck to Detroit, Michigan to sit at General Motors, where they stayed on trucks, and then they shipped them from there down to Indianapolis. From Indianapolis, they were given to VIPs and drivers and people that were involved within the race, and then for the months of April and May of 2016 were used by those people for various events for the race. Again, some were on the track for promotional purposes, as this car was, and some cars weren't. However, the fact of the matter is, Chevrolet used them as promotional vehicles and then sold them as new vehicles to dealerships because they'd never been taken off of MSO or certificate of origin. They were still new vehicles, never been taken to motor vehicles divisions of any state, sold to a new buyer yet. So while they may have had miles on them, they were still sold as new cars, okay? Now that doesn't mean though that you can't find one that doesn't have any miles on it. Again, not every 2016 Camaro Indy Pace car was at Indianapolis. There are a few that have very little miles on them. So I would say that if you have a car that has less than 1,000 miles on it, you probably have a car that was not at Indianapolis. I'm not saying for sure, but the odds are likely you don't. Most of the cars had somewhere between 2,500 and 5,000 miles on them once they got to the dealerships for sale. Now, one other thing that you can do if you want to be a little bit sneaky is you can go back into the GPS system and find out the original destinations that the car had been to, as I did, and I found multiple entries of places in Indianapolis where the car had traveled before I purchased it. So again, most people don't know just how rare these cars are. It's difficult to find any car that's built in such low numbers anywhere, but to buy something that's only one of 54 is a very unique opportunity. And while there's still vehicles out there, I thought it'd be important for people to know what to look for. Because again, these can be faked pretty easily by just putting on stickers on doors and a quarter panel. But there are telltale signs to look for, and make sure that you look for those things, because that's what's going to separate yours from all the rest. There's going to be a video coming out on this car coming out called The Drive of a Lifetime. It's going to be chronicling my drive with this vehicle, purchasing it from Indiana and driving it from Northwest Indiana all the way to the Pacific Northwest, and I hope you can join me for that. That should come out sometime in October. Until then, if you're looking for a special car that truly will have incredible value in the future and that's extremely rare right now and incredibly fun to drive, I cannot more than highly recommend a 2016 Chevrolet Camaro Pace car. God bless you until we see you again. Bye-bye.